lawmakers don't pass the margins tax by March 15th, it will automatically go on the 2014 ballot and may have company in the form of a competing tax initiative from an unlikely source. State Senate Republicans, at least some of them, want to do away with the constitutional protections for the mining industry to make way for a hike in the mining tax and REIT property taxes previously exempt, perhaps. Joining me to talk about the big tax day in Carson City, the forces behind those potentially competing measures. The president of the Nevada State Education Association, which supports the margin tax, Lynn Warney, and the minority leader of the state Senate, Republican Michael Roberson. Welcome back to both of you. Thanks for coming on. Let's start with the margins tax hearing. You know, both these taxes proposals have something in common. It seems like they have very little support in the legislature. Let me start with you, Ms. Warney. That hearing went on for 2 or 3 hours. As I said, I didn't hear much new, frankly, from your side or the parade of the Just Say No caucus. This was all really a charade. You know they're not going to vote for this in the legislature, right?
You're right, and that's why we proposed this strategy. We're going to go to the ballot in 2014, and we'll let the over 150 signatures, which represent voters in Nevada.
150,000.
Excuse me, 150,000 signatures that were on the initiative. You know, let those folks go to the polls as well as others. Remember, we gathered those signatures in less than 3 months of gathering.
It seemed to me the most compelling argument today against the margin tax, beyond all the Chicken Littles running around in that room, is why would you have a tax that taxes business even when they're not profitable? How do you, I mean, we've talked about this before, but how do you, seems to me a pretty serious criticism.
Well, is profitability, you know, a prerequisite for the gaming tax, for sales tax, you know, for property tax? You know, are you required to be profitable to experience, you know, those taxes?
The gaming is taxed on its gross revenues, in case people don't know that.
But we've seen that industry lose, you know, revenue over the last several years, yet they still are, you know, held accountable to the gaming tax, the MBT tax, for example, the modified business tax. But so profitability is not necessarily a prerequisite for paying a tax.
But at a time in the economy when I think you'd acknowledge small businesses are hurting in this economy, I guess the argument would be, why would you add to their burden by putting this tax on?
But we're not focusing on small businesses. These are businesses that bring in over $1 million annually.
Some of those are kind of small, though, really. Even, I mean, it sounds like a lot of money, but those are small businesses. Some of them. We're not talking about MGM Resorts here.
That many of the businesses that the chambers, for example, came to the table with would not necessarily have skin in the game. They would not qualify with this $1 million total revenue, you know, floor that we had put in.
So you are trying to exempt a lot of the smaller businesses.
Exactly.
Senator Roberson, I'm going to get to your proposal in a moment, but you were on that committee, the joint committee today that listened to this. We know you hate the margins tax. We know you're closed-minded about this, but does it bother you that all these businesses in the same groups, I know you haven't been in the legislature that long, but it's the same line, oh no, you can't tax us, businesses will never move here, everyone's going to shut down. I mean, this is a Chicken Little approach, isn't it?
No, it's not with respect to this tax. And Lynn knows very well this is nothing more than a state income tax, and it will pile on struggling small businesses. $1 million a year sounds like a lot of money in revenue. It's $2,700 a day. There are a lot of small businesses that have sales of $2,700 a day, and many of those businesses aren't making a profit right now. This is the wrong way to generate revenue for education.
Speaking of Chicken Little, you were the loudest Chicken Little of all on this. Let me show you what you said today about Ms. Warney's proposal. In the meantime, we're all aware that the margins tax will be on the 2014 ballot. We believe this is a fatally flawed, job-killing tax on businesses large and small that will stall economic development, put employers out of business, and lead to even higher numbers of unemployed Nevadans. Man, I don't even want to finish this program. I'm going to go hide in a closet. This is devastation. It's an apocalypse for the state, sir.
You should go hide in the closet.
Oh, come on. You don't really believe that.
Statement.
You don't really believe that.
Yes, I do. I think it is going to kill jobs, put people out of work, shut businesses down, many of them small businesses, and stop any economic development efforts that we have going on right now. I think it's that bad.
What do you say to that, Ms. Warney?
Evidence does not play out to support.
Well, we don't know yet. It hasn't been put into.
But if you look at Texas, so they decided to throw Texas out, as the example in which this tax is supposedly played out and driven business away.
It is the only other state that has a tax like this.
Yet Texas remains one of the most business-friendly, growing states in the country. They invest in their education. They invest in infrastructure within that state. Yet the margins tax hasn't killed any of that.
And it was proposed by a Republican governor by the name of Rick Perry. We're going to take a break. I know you want to jump in. We do want to talk a lot more about the margins tax and about Senator Roberson putting his head out there and saying to the mining lobby, chop it off, I dare you. We'll talk about his bold proposal a little bit later. Roberson, who proposed a mining tax plan today that may surprise you, and Lynn Warney, who is behind the margins tax as the head of the state teachers union. I don't take most of those businesses seriously. I have to be honest with you, because I've heard them crying wolf for years. Some of them may have good cases, others may not when it comes to business taxation. I'll tell you who I do take seriously, though, and that's Carol Villardo. And she's been studying the tax structure for many years here. Yes, she's conservative. Yes, she's with the conservative group. But she said your tax isn't fair. It's not going to be easy to administer, and it's not stable. Looking back, is this, I mean, there's no such thing as a perfect tax. Why is this the best tax?
We believe it is broad-based. We believe it is fair. Yes, it is going to be complicated to administer. It's a new tax to the state, and it's something that we're going to need to put in infrastructure for. Hence, the fiscal note that was attached to it that we heard taxation.
$5.5 million or so to implement it?
Exactly. And that the price of that implementation or the cost of it is built into the initiative. Hence, you saw, testimony from the banking industry, saying, why pick on us? But it is broad-based, and it is stable, and we believe it is predictable. But what this tax does, which is something that we've never had before in the state of Nevada, is a dedicated funding source for K-12 education. That is what's needed.
You say you're an advocate for funding education. Everybody says they're an advocate for funding education. Let me take it at face value that you are. One of the points that came up, and Peggy Pierce, who's on the committee, the Assembly Committee, brought this up today, and to some extent the Speaker did, as I mentioned earlier. It's the Just Say No caucus with no solutions. You want to increase funding for education. Is there a fair way to tax business in this state?
Well, first of all, I think it's ironic that Lynn says that it's going to cost $5.5 million just to implement the margins tax. My question would be, how many teachers would that hire with $5.5 million?
That's totally disingenuous. Now you're going back to your other life as a lawyer.
No,
and bringing
I'm not.
Come on, when you can't argue the facts, you know what you do, right?
I and the majority of my caucus has proposed a solution today.
We're going to get to that in a second.
Know.
I promise you I'll get to that, but I want to get to business taxation. This is what I hear all the time. Businesses can't afford this. Businesses will go bankrupt. Businesses won't move to the state. Businesses here have never had a business tax. The property taxes in this state are unusually low. Is there a fair way to tax businesses so they can pay for the prosperity that the gaming industry and others have brought to this state?
What I've said on your show previously, I've said it to the Democrat leadership and my Republican colleagues, that I am open to a broadening of the base that's more reflective of our service-based economy. Maybe that's a business transaction tax of some sort.
Sales tax on services.
Maybe,
what that
maybe. Big caveat, if it makes sense, how would it be implemented? And during this session, I have to tell you, it's going to have to be revenue neutral, because we are not going to put another burden on struggling businesses while we're in the throes of this economy where, yes, we're coming out of it slowly. We don't want to do anything to upset this turnaround in the economy. So we're not going to support a tax increase on small businesses in the state this session.
Isn't that a contradiction, though? You say you want to put more money into education. We'll get to what you said this morning, because you said it again, and so did 5 other members of your caucus. Yet you want revenue-neutral tax reform. That's not putting more money into education.
It's apples and oranges. Let me explain to you why. Okay. We have to live within the constraints we have during this session. I think the governor is right when he says we've got to grow our way out of this economy. We can't tax our way out, and we can't cut our way out. Having said that, we know that this job-killing margins tax is going to be on the ballot. And I also personally believe that it is ridiculous that one industry in this state has had a special constitutional protection for 150 years.
He really wants me to talk about the mining tax. I happen to agree with it, but I want to finish up the margins tax discussion first. This is going to go on the ballot. The legislature's not going to pass it. We all know that. This is going to be tough for you, though. Tell me what the argument is. You heard all the arguments against it today. It's going to make businesses close. It's going to hurt everybody. What's the argument that you, I mean, this is a complicated tax to explain. You'll acknowledge that, too.
It is.
How do you sell this at the ballot next year when you know all these forces are going to be arrayed against you trying to fight it?
Because it's a time in the state's history where we need to establish a dedicated funding source for our public schools in the state of Nevada. We have languished at the bottom in per pupil expenditures. We have cut class sizes to the point where we heard even in testimony today that there are class sizes in excess of 50 students to one teacher.
Class size reduction, by the way, is the most popular item out there among parents and among the public. You know that, right?
Absolutely. In fact, we heard from the gentleman from the Retailers Association that also said educators' pay is something that we need to address. Both of those cost money. What this would do is secure dedicated funding for K-12 education. We have never said that it would increase necessarily the funding for education, but it is a dedicated source for education, something that we have never had in this state.
The argument's going to be it's going to hurt businesses, as you know, therefore hurting people. And what you're really all about is just higher salaries for your members. You don't really care about the kids. I'm doing the campaign for you right here. I just did the 30-second ad.
But when you look at the states that are recovering economically in this country, they invest in their education 3 times fold what we do in the state of Nevada, as well as have some sort of broad-based business tax in that state. In this state, we're proposing the margins tax.
I don't disagree that we need to put more money, target more money in certain areas in education. We also need reform. We need proficiency standards. We need to get rid of social promotion of children. We do need to spend more money on English language learner programs. And
you propose $40 million on
yes.
we need to
There's a right way to do it and a wrong way to do it. The margins tax is the wrong way to do it.
We need to take a break. You know what, Ms. Warney? Senator Roberson has an idea for a dedicated funding source for education that would raise a lot of money, and it would tax an industry that has had its way in this state. You know how long? Since 1864, when it wrote the Constitution. We'll talk about that. Ralston report. Reno covering the legislature on a big day, the margins tax hearing, and the state Senate Republican leader proposed a bold new plan to tax the mining industry. Yep, you heard that right. And Senator Michael Roberson is here with Lynn Warney, who is behind the margins tax. All right, a few hours. You didn't even give poor Ms. Warney a chance to have her day today. You tried to steal her thunder. You had this press conference today where you announced that you are going to support, you've supported it before, this resolution to take mining out of the Constitution. Yes. With a majority of your caucus supporting that now, including some who had previously voted against it, and hopefully working together with Democrats and others to tax mining in some way that you'll be able to do if SJR 15 passes. This came out of the blue. Tell me what's behind it.
Well, it's mining tax reform. We think they should be at the table with every other industry when we're talking about revenue and funding education. They're not at the table because they have a special constitutional protection. So what we're saying is we think that's wrong. We think we need to pass SJR 15 and take their protection out of the Constitution. We also think there should be an alternative to this job-killing margins tax.
Is that the official name of the margins tax, the job-killing margins tax?
I've renamed it, yes.
Okay, I gathered.
If the voters of this state want to increase taxes, we want to give them a better vehicle for that makes sense and provides some more equity in our tax structure than the margins tax.
What prompted you to do this today, though? I mean, this was done, you cloaked this pretty well. You certainly didn't come up with it just this morning. You sprang at everyone. And, of course, the way the legislative process works, Democrats were whining. They didn't hear about it. Even some Assembly Republicans, certainly the mining lobbyists. One of them said to at least Sheila Leslie, who was after the mining industry, had the courtesy to stab us in the front. You stabbed them in the back. Ira Hansen, an assemblyman, a Republican, said the same thing. You are a backstabber, sir.
They're confusing policy disagreements with personalities. This is not personal. They want to take it personal. That's their problem. This is policy. And they've gotten not a free ride, but a cheap ride in Nevada for a very long time. And when a comparable industry like gaming
let's talk about that. I have those numbers for you. Because I want to ask Ms. Warney a question about this map that Senator Roberson and his caucus have done. In the press release the Senate Republicans put out, they figured mining pays a 2.3% tax rate on gross revenue, while the top tier of gaming companies pay a 6.75% rate on gross revenue, putting mining's rate up to 6.75% with yield. Listen to this, Ms. Warney, $780 million for Nevada's education system during the 2015-16, 2016-17 school years, Republicans said. Why is that not a fantastic idea?
Well, if it's such a fantastic idea, why isn't the senator and his colleagues that support this measure moving it forward as a bill during this legislative session? The needs are now. The needs are real. We have cut nearly $1 billion in the last 5 years out of the education budgets. So if this is such a great idea, why aren't we moving forward with this as a bill this session?
It's a very good question. I'm going to ask him that in a second. But tell me why you are not jumping for joy and embracing this and saying, good for you, Senator Roberson, for wanting to put almost $1 billion into education.
We applaud the senator and his colleagues for seeing that there is a true need in the education system in the state of Nevada, that we have not funded our students and educators appropriately so that our youngsters can succeed with the peers around the country. However, the needs are immediate, they're real, and they're now. So let's move it forward as a bill. Or is this all about killing the margins tax?
Ah, my next question. She's helped me out. We don't even need me here. She can do the interview. Really, this is a very clever way for you to just kill the, what is it called again? Could you say?
The job-killing margins tax.
Thank you for that, sir. Yes. I guess what I'd ask you is, why not pass a bill with the trigger being, if SJR 15 passes, all this money goes into education? You could do it that way, couldn't you?
If NSCA comes out and publicly denounces the job-killing margins tax and agrees to spend several $1 million to kill it, I might consider that. Do you want to do that, Lynn?
Senator, we're all about broadening the tax base in the state of Nevada. Your proposal is industry-specific. We believe mining, as well as others in the state, need to pay their fair share. So I think it's something that we should certainly have a conversation about, because you're coming to the table to have, offer a solution, to have a conversation about it. But we need to do this now. So if you have the support, then let's move it now.
Well, you say do it now, but even if we passed legislation this session, it cannot become effective until SJR 15 passes at the ballot.
Same time that the margins tax would pass.
So you get no advantage by passing the legislation now, but you still have this job-killing margins tax on the ballot. That scares a lot of us. It scares businesses. It should scare Nevada.
All right, we have to take a break. You heard Lynn Warney say she applauds the senator, so she's clapping her own hands, but she won't shake his hand on a deal. I have one more segment to get them to make a deal. Michael Roberson, who proposed a bold plan to tax mining today, and Lynn Warney, who was group, the Nevada State Education Association, has proposed the margins tax. I don't blame Lynn Warney for being a little bit suspicious. This is all just about killing the job-killing margins tax. You hate that so much. This is a great idea. You put a poison pill out there on the ballot. You know what else makes me suspicious? Is, mining and gaming in the past have always been against industry-specific taxation, because they're the ones usually who are getting the industry-specific taxes, made the case for broadening the tax base, which, by the way, they're right about, even though I think they're self-interested. I have a feeling that gaming and mining conspires now again on this. What do you think?
I wouldn't be so sure.
No? Tell me why.
Well, we will see. I've talked to members of the gaming community. I know privately they're very supportive of this, and I think you'll see some of those gaming companies publicly come out and support this. I'm not going to name names tonight. I'll let them do that
Well,
themselves.
The gaming industry put out this very tepid statement that they're against industry-specific taxation, or arm in arm with the mining industry for years. You're saying you think you're going to get some gaming support on this?
I do. Yeah. I'm optimistic, John.
Gaming plus the teachers union, this thing would just fly through. You sure you don't want to shake his hand right now and say you support it?
Well, I think the other player in this that we haven't talked about is, where's the governor?
Where's the governor? He's a member of your own party. He does not support this. I got a statement from him saying he doesn't support tax increases. You will never get him on this. You know that, right?
I'm not so sure.
No, why do you say that? He's not going to. He is Mr. No New Taxes. He's running for re-election. He doesn't want to create an issue.
Well, I would not expect the governor to be enthusiastic about this, because he has not seen any legislation. We have not even started to draft legislation. But I am hopeful over the course of the session he will be persuaded that this is a good alternative to the margins, the job-killing margins tax, and it's fair to give voters a choice. That's all we're saying. Give voters a choice.
He's not going to sign anything that is anything but something that's revenue neutral. And even though you're revenue neutral on some big tax reform deal, you don't want this mining deal to be revenue neutral.
Although I certainly believe that mining needs to come to the table, and we need to reform how they're taxed in this state. What we're asking our fellow legislators and the governor to do is simply enable the people of Nevada to have a choice at the ballot. It doesn't take a 2/3 vote. A tax increase takes a 2/3 vote.
Right.
This doesn't. We're not raising taxes. We're giving the people of Nevada a choice at the ballot.
Let me ask
That's all we're doing.
Well, let's wrap up, Ms. Warney, with this question. Can you envision any circumstances, and what would they be, where you would do what Senator Roberson suggested? You'd say, okay, the margins tax is no good, we'll spend money to kill it, and we'll support an alternative. Is there any kind of alternative you might support?
At the moment, no, I can't say that there's anything that we would support. I've yet to see the details of what the senator is proposing. Yet we came to the hearing today with the voices of over 150,000 voters behind us as we walked in, and I think it would be irresponsible to walk away from their will that they, entrusted in us by signing that initiative to broaden the tax base in the state of Nevada by instituting the margins tax, the education initiative.
In other words, what you mean is you don't want to give up your bargaining power yet when you haven't seen a clear plan from him, right? Am I translating correctly?
And it's
Ms.
not
Mooney?
150,000. It's 107,000.
Yeah, that's how many
about
were
10%
verified.
of the
That's how many were
population.
verified.
That's right.
We don't know for
Those
sure.
are the ones that
All right.
count.
All right. Senator Roberson, Lynn Morney, it's always a pleasure having both of you on the program. I appreciate the spirit of discussion. Thanks for coming on. Now, on the next Ralston Reports, is Nevada dumping its mentally ill in other states? It's called bus therapy. Is it really happening here? We'll tell you about a new investigation on the next Ralston Reports. Thanks for watching, everybody.